Hi, I'm Paul Feig. I'm at Duke's Bar in London, and I'm talking to the Patton Club. Yeah, I grew up in Michigan. I was son of a retailer who owned an army surplus store right outside of Detroit, and my mom was a housewife, and then she started working with my dad once I was old enough to not need supervision, if you will. And then I was always an actor. I started out as an actor. I was doing a lot of school plays and just kind of pursued that all through high school. But then at the age of 15, I decided to become a stand-up comedian, and so started working in the clubs around Detroit, doing that. Even though I was too young to get into the clubs, I had to bring my parents. They would get me in, and then we'd be around all these fairly R-rated comedians, and I'd get up and do my terrible routine. But it was my way to kind of get my foot into the door in the comedy world, and then from there, eventually ended up out in LA to become a filmmaker. So I went to USC Film School, the University of Southern California, and then graduated from there. Became a script reader for Michael Phillips, who was a big producer at the time, who produced The Sting and Taxi Driver, movies like that. And through that, I learned more about script writing and movie making in general to augment what I learned in film school, but then was still hankering to be on the stage, and so left that and went full-time into stand-up comedy. Went full-time into stand-up comedy and became a stand-up for about 5 years professionally, from 85 to 90. Then I segued into acting, and I acted for about 15 years. I was a regular on 5 different TV series. They were always on, and they'd get on for a year, and then they get canceled. So finally, I was a regular on Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and then I got fired from that, written out of the show, which kicked me out of the nest, and it made me decide to go behind the camera and become a filmmaker. And I created a show called Freaks and Geeks that did quite well critically, didn't do well commercially, but it got my name known and my voice known. And then from there, I directed a lot of television shows like The Office and Arrested Development, Mad Men, things like that, and then eventually made a movie called Bridesmaids, and ever since then I've been making movies. I think the first big break I had as a filmmaker was when I created Freaks and Geeks, because I was a struggling actor. I decided after I was written out of Sabrina the Teenage Witch that I was going to go behind the camera, and so I took all my money from that show and I made a low-budget independent film called Life Sold Separately that never got released, but I wrote, directed, and starred in it, and produced it, did everything. It was out on the road trying to sell it. I finally got into this kind of traveling film festival that went around all the local colleges, and you'd show the film and present it and all that. But when I was out doing that, I decided to write Freaks and Geeks, which was a show based on when I grew up, about sort of the nerds and the burnout kids that I knew and was friends with, and then that ended up selling to NBC, and so that became a big deal. I love directing. I love directing movies. It's just my passion. When I created Freaks and Geeks on TV, I loved doing it, but I always was hankering to get back to making movies. And so Bridesmaids was a big break for me because that actually did really well. I made 2 movies before that, one called I Am David and one called Unaccompanied Minors, that both did very poorly, and because of that I was actually in movie jail for a while, which means the studios won't let you make movies anymore, basically. And so I did a lot of TV directing in that time, but when Bridesmaids came along and it was a success, then I was able to keep making movies. So I love all my movies. I think I'm most proud of the movie Spy, which I wrote and directed, but I also love my latest movie, Simple Favor, which I was really happy with, because I like to play in different genres, and what's fun is to try to do different genres in a way that I can make funny but also real, and so that's my goal. Right now I'm actually living in London. I shot a movie here called Last Christmas that Emma Thompson wrote, and she's in, along with Amelia Clark is starring in it, and Henry Golding, who was in Simple Favor with me, and Michelle Yeoh. It's a Christmas movie all about London. We shot all over central London, and we finished production in last month in February. Wait, it's February? Yeah. And so now we're going to be here editing and doing post-production until August, and then the movie comes out on November 15th. If I wasn't a film director, gosh, I would have gone into fashion, I think. I love men's styling. To be honest, I'm not a fan so much of fashion as I am of style, and I like really timeless style for men. And I was lucky enough to get to design a line of suits for J. Crew a couple of years ago. Suits and shirts, accessories, cufflinks, ties, pocket silks, the whole thing. And I love that. I just love classic men's styling. I like styles that are never in style and never go out of style, and so I wear a lot of Savile Row Bespoke. I'm currently wearing Anderson and Shepherd, which I wear a lot of Anderson and Shepherd. I like their style and their ethos, and I love a very traditional British style. But then with a little slightly more Italian tailoring to it, try to get a little bit more of a fit to it. But yeah, I love men's clothing. I'd say my personal style is very classic British, and I try to bring a slight bit of Italian sprezzatura into it, but not that much. I for some reason can't pull off the very Italian sort of more tighter fitting things that are slightly ultra sprezzatura where things are popping out and all that. I want to do that, but I always end up kind of neatening it up a little bit. So I think I'm much more kind of classic British, I'd say. Oh, my fashion faux pas. I do get hung up sometimes on trying to match things too much, because I actually like when you get a little more outside the box and let your pocket silk not have anything to do with your tie and that sort of thing. So I think I still get a little too anal, if you will, in when I put myself together. But I don't know. I'm pretty proud of myself as far as the way I put myself together. I drive my wife crazy because sometimes she's just like, can't you just wear a pair of jeans? Because I think it puts the pressure on her to have to dress up. But I don't look good in jeans. I can make any pair of jeans look like somebody's grandpa when they put them on. But for some reason, suits and ties and all that, it all makes sense. So even when I go on vacation, I usually wear a tie and a jacket, and I can't help it. You should definitely have a couple of suits, but I say if you're just going to have a few suits, get very neutral suits. Get like a navy blue, dark blue, get a dark gray, because what happens is if you've got just those couple of neutral suits, then you can get a lot of different ties, a lot of different pocket silks, and people will think you're wearing a new suit all the time, or even patterns of shirts. And so, the suit's like the big investment. That's like buying the good car, and then everything else is sort of the window dressing you put on it with the different patterns of shirts. I mean, I personally am very much into a white shirt, a classic white shirt, because I think then it pops my tie a little bit more, and again, I like the tie and the pocket silk, and for me, the boutonnieres to do a lot of the work. But then if you're going to expand out, then, really experiment with different patterns and, get those suits. I love a good pinstripe. I really love a pinstripe. I'm also a big three-piece suit guy I like, but I also love a good double-breasted. Ironically, the one thing I don't wear very often is just a plain single-breast two-piece suit. I love Ralph Lauren. I'm a huge Ralph Lauren fan. I think he's probably influenced my style as much as anybody. Giant Tom Ford fan. Love his stuff. I enjoy Etro for how out there they can be with some of their things. And Tom Sweeney now, who I really like. They're doing Off the Peg as well as Bespoke. And Anderson & Shepherd also has a haberdashery, and they do it that way. So, yeah, but I also find that I just kind of, I look for different things. My favorite thing to do is just sort of observe, either through magazines, men's fashion magazines, but also on the street. It's my favorite thing, especially in a stylish city like London, to get ideas, because you'll just see, London's so diverse in just the way that people dress and the way that they present themselves, and it's always fun to go like, oh, I like that one thing that person did, or oh, that's an interesting thing, you could add that, and sort of accumulate these little looks and kind of piece them together. Yeah, cars for some reason. I appreciate cars, but I'm not into cars. I feel like I've grown up in Los Angeles. I mean, I grew up in Detroit, but I moved to Los Angeles when I was 17 years old and have been there ever since. And so, to me, cars are sort of a necessary evil because you're in them all the time. And also, I'm not as much into things that are gigantic I love watches. That's my favorite thing to collect, and I've got a ton of watches because I love the mechanics. To me, it's like a car. You appreciate the mechanics of a car, but it's small and you can wear it and you can appreciate it and have it with you all the time. So, yeah, I think watches are probably the thing I'm probably the most fanatical about. I'm also very fanatical about walking sticks. I collect old walking sticks. I've probably got 80 of them, and I actually use them on the set when I'm directing. I'll always have one with me. Just is a weird affectation. I don't know. It just I'm always in a suit and tie when I direct too, and yeah, I just think I like I'm a very into affectations. I think for men it's like there's nothing wrong with it because we don't have that many options when we dress up. Really, I mean now if you're younger, there's way more you can do with streetwear and all the different crazy things that people have. But somebody my age, you start wearing the streetwear, you just look ridiculous. I mean, the rule I always say for guys over 40, let's say, is look at your head, because when you put on an outfit, it's very easy to look at it and you're like, wow, this looks so cool. But then I say, but look up, look at your head on top of that outfit, because you might look really ridiculous. Today I'm wearing a Lange & Söhne. It's a Zeitwelt, so it's actually a digital watch, but a mechanical digital watch, much like the one they have in the Opera House, wherever Lange & Söhne is made. So I've got that, but I also am one of the guys who also carries a pocket watch. So I've got this Patek Philippe. It's from 1902, and I don't know. I can never have enough watches. I have so many watches that somebody had said there's some people that wear watches on both wrists. So maybe I'll do that and knock it up to 3 that I always have with me. Yeah, I'm obsessed with gin. It's my favorite drink. To me, it's got the history and the glamour of cocktails because it's I feel it feels like one of the older liquors to me, or at least that's how I like to look at it. And I always wanted to have my own gin brand, and tried for a long time, but couldn't find a company that wanted to do it with me. And then finally linked up with a company called Minhas, which is actually they're a big brewery. They do a lot of brewing out of Calgary. I think they're the 7th largest brewers of beer in North America, but they've been doing spirits also, and wanted to get into a high-end spirit. And so I presented them with what I wanted to do, which is a brand called Ardingstalls, which is based on my mother's maiden name. My mother's side of the family is British, and I wanted to do a traditional London dry that felt like it had been around forever. And so they came on board, have been fantastic, and we spent a lot of money developing this amazing bottle that almost looks like a decanter. Actually, it does look like a decanter, and this is my favorite gin. I mean, we took a long time getting the recipe right, and I like to say it's a gin for people who don't think they like gin, but also if you do like gin, you'll appreciate it too. But it's not so juniper forward that it has those connotations that I find a lot of people were traumatized in their youth by gin because they would go into their parents' liquor cabinet and drink Beefeater or something like that and get all that juniper, and they would be so put off of gin for the rest of their life. So I'm always trying to lure them back, and I feel like Ardingstalls could do that. Well, to me, my favorite gin-based drink is right here, martini. I'm a martini man, definitely. Whenever I'm shooting a movie, we do what we call French hours, which means instead of working a 12-hour day with a lunch that sometimes extends into 14 hours, 16 hours of overtime, we do 10 hours, no lunch, just we have food circulating around, and then at the end of the 10 hours we pull the plug. And one of the main reasons for that is so that I can have dinner and a martini at the end of the day, because that's kind of what gets me through my shoot days. I love working. I always say we work hard, but then we like to play hard too. And the idea of we're going to work intensely for 10 hours, and then I know that at the end of that day I can come to Duke's when I'm shooting in London and get a martini. So that's definitely my favorite. Other gin-based drinks I like. I love a good Negroni. I love a good Ramos Fizz with gin in it. That's always a nice one. Although the bartenders hate you when you order that because they have to shake for about 10 minutes. So if you want to upset your bartender, order a Negroni. Not a Negroni. Order a Ramos Fizz. I blew the joke. No. Well, again, Duke's Bar is my favorite. This is my favorite bar in the world. Alessandro Palazzo, who has been the Palazzi, who's been the bartender here forever. I've known him. I've been coming here for 25 years, my wife and I, and he's just the greatest. And I mean, he makes the world's greatest martini. If you see my movie A Simple Favor, we actually show how to make a Duke's Martini in it and say that it's a Duke's Martini. But Alessandro's the one who patented the swirl and dump of the vermouth. So yeah, Duke's is definitely my favorite. In New York, I love Bemelman's Bar at the Carlisle Hotel. I think is great. And then in Barcelona, there's a place called the Dry Martini Bar that's fantastic. It's a great place to get a martini. The gin will be out middle of this year. It looks like it'll be kind of ready to be sent around, at least to various people to see what they think in the spring. But then by the end of the year, it'll hopefully be everywhere. But Alessandro tried it. It was the most nerve-wracking day of my life because he's very, very hard on gins, but he really, really liked it a lot. So fingers crossed that we do well.